Next up, we have a movie that I know Zach was anticipating so much. I don't even know if he wants to review it because maybe he wants to wait for the director's cuts.
I want to keep my thoughts to myself. You know, it's like my own precious little thing. I don't want to share it with the world.
I wanted to keep my viewing experience not even to myself, to anybody else. I was not ready for Rebel Moon Part 2 because I could not remember Rebel Moon Part 1. And I think what needs to be said is I've been listening to a lot of his interviews. I know we had a classic one that dropped at South by where he had mentioned that we're never going to see 300 the same way again. If you need to search that up, go search up what he said about the Men in 300. I think I don't mind Zack Snyder as much, and by that I mean I have actually liked some of his movies.
Yeah,
I like the risks he take. I think when he does certain things with like Batman and Watchmen and this idea of like, why can't I do this with a character? I want to push the edges of it. I understand it. I don't think people have a problem with his approach to it, the idea. They don't like his vision for what he did. Someone else can ask the same question. They may make the better movie, but I don't find a problem with them asking those questions. Someone's got to ask them. Mm-hmm. Why does this suck? This is boring.
It's so bad.
I am a person who is for people making their own visions, but like I'm almost torn with like, wasn't this just a Star Wars B-side script?
Yeah, it really feels like it, right? Like there's sort of the movie opens with this narration from Anthony Hopkins, who's playing a robot for some reason.
Anthony Hopkins.
It never feels natural. But like it's just this information dump with all of these like names and places and people, and you know, within a minute you already feel like it's an overload of useless stuff, just reminding you about all these dynamics that he failed to establish in a way that could get you invested in the first film. Like this whole film is like this struggle between this like farming population and these this sort of like oppressive regime, but like all the dynamics are completely forgettable. All of the like character arcs feel very archetypal. They're not like specific to these people. It just feels like it's a movie that is begging for an attachment to something like Star Wars to have people actually care, because it just doesn't. There's nothing interesting aside from it.
It's weird because it's not attached, so we can't really speak about how lame it does it, because Halo is a perfect example, the show on Paramount Plus, where you watch that and you go, oh, you're assuming people have played all the games. That's not how you adapt a show.
Right.
But at least it's got the Halo name. Like you're saying, this is assuming it's going to get the grace of being in the Star Wars universe. And it's like, but you're not. What Rebel Moon Lord do we have to bring into this? Like it is very much reliant on having been like a franchise store from a bigger chain.
The absence of that lore is profoundly felt in this movie.
Yeah, it almost feels like a demo of what you want this world to be, because like you're saying, it feels very cliche. I'm seeing the comments start to mention Dune. Yeah, I feel like he's almost trying to get ahead. For example, there is a character, I don't want to get into too much spoilers. Dune will reveal certain things in the next coming movies. And because that book has been out, all I'm saying is he did it in part 2 for certain characters. So some people, and I don't think it actually may happen, so I'm just speaking out here, because I don't think anyone's watching this movie, but it's like putting it on film before Dune does it, even though it was Dune's first. He's not even going to get that. But it makes you wonder, it's like, why not do something original outside of Dune, outside of Star Wars? I always go back to that Taika quote. Well, if we make it so original, when is it not Star Wars? Exactly. That's what got people to Star Wars to begin with. Something so original. It's more than just this one basic world, and him trying to recreate that so that we have these people that we're following. I don't think it works. I don't think the costumes were great. They got wigs on people here that look like they're from a Medea movie.
That's the other thing, too, is that, like, you know, one thing that you normally can take for granted in a Zack Snyder movie, maybe the story's not great, maybe some of the plot points don't make full sense. Normally they look very good. Yeah, the way that they blend sets with green screen never quite feels that right. You know, you can feel that they're very much on top of the backgrounds in a way that is atypical for this big of a production.
It looks like a platformer. Look at this still.
Yeah.
It looks like she's just do 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 do. It looks like an 8-bit game almost. You know,
Yeah.
she's never seen that background. They've never interacted with that background.
And the wigs, like you mentioned, they look like bad
Crazy.
cosplay.
It's some really terrible stuff, and it makes me wonder, like, how many of these movies should be using HDR? Because the worst thing that happens to this movie is something that I think happened to the Hobbit films, in where the high definition is what makes things stand out so much.
Mm-hmm.
So on your TV, you're seeing all the faults. It's like, damn, you're too crispy for your own good. Like you had mentioned, at least in 300, I think we said this the first time around, he still has the same like visual techniques and stuff, this slow-mo, trying to make it like this pastiche thing. How 20 years later are you worse than your, what was it, '06 version?
Mm-hmm.
How are we devolving? And I'm wondering if it's just because he's too busy focusing on the other things and he doesn't have source material. 300 was a comic.
Yeah.
A lot of the other stuff have been comics or source material he could base off and tweak. He's trying to do something original here, and it's almost like he's split 50-50, even the parts that his fans have enjoyed the most, because I've never seen this happen for Zack Snyder, where even his own fans aren't here flooding up the scores.
Yeah.
That's a sad day. That's a sad day.
Release the Snyder Cut is not trending right now.
They're saying hold the Rebel Moon cuts. That's what they're saying.
Yeah, I mean, we got this comment from Devesh in the live stream who asked, do you think this would be better if it was a Star Wars film? And I think, like, it's not so much that it would be better. It's that, like, this is a drawing that's an outline waiting to be filled in, right? Like, it's the absence of actual character, actual setting, actual place, right? And the movie feels like it spends so much time trying to be part of this bigger picture that it never manages to get you to get a clear focus on what it's trying to deliver right now. This whole film feels like just a small slice of movie, right? It's just warning the people about the oncoming battle, preparing for the battle, and the battle, right? It's not a planet hopping space adventure. And it feels like it's coming off of the coattails of another movie. And even the end, I didn't find that conclusive. It feels like it's teasing further adventures here. And it's just this, it's this pursuit of creating this large galaxy to set your story across and not focusing on telling one compelling story in this movie.
That ending felt, I know they call them episodes in Star Wars, but that felt like the end of an episode.
Yeah.
Not a movie. It's weird, dude. I agree. And like, it would not have been better.
And like, I rag on MCU and the interconnectivity of that often, but one thing that...
In his sleep, he does this.
But one thing that I think you have to give them credit for is that, like, it's not... They still manage to make most of their films watchable if you haven't seen every single thing that came before it. And I felt so immediately at a loss in this movie just because I didn't remember almost anything from the previous film, even though I watched it more than once.
Right? And in the worst part, that they're just going to repeat it to you anyway, so you don't even care to invest or rewatch anything. It's like you're just coasting through it. So Rebel Moon, I think we've talked about this enough. But I'll add that what you were saying about it feeling like it's building up to something that isn't there. I think Star Wars, The Hobbit, Lord, all of these series have done like the first three, and then they're like, let's do the backstory. What happens when you get a crazy dude who's like, what if I just start with the backstory before I gave them the thing that actually got the franchise to kick off to begin with? So I feel like he's starting with his episodes 1, 2, 3, even though Star Wars started with episodes 4, 5, 6, and then changed it later. Hey, this is the man who got to change things later with the Snyder Cut, so maybe that's what it is. Too much juice for him, but hey, that's not going anywhere. You still feel
like this is all like a artificial construction to build up hype for a future cut?
At this point, I don't want to think about this movie ever again. But he still kind of carries that, because he did say this corny thing. I'm curious your thoughts on it, because I know sometimes you hear his stuff, and it could... he's got this thing where it's like it kind of makes sense if somebody else said it, but we assume a lot with Zack Snyder because we know how angsty he is. That's the problem. He'll say something where it makes sense, but it's angsty. He referenced his own director's cuts as those being the things where he gets to deconstruct his movies. And I'm like, no, buddy, that's a director's commentary.
Right.
I don't want a fourth wall breaking in your director's cut. And also, what does that show me? That you're belittling the original release? to save them something for what? For the Nebula upload? Like, what are you doing, bro? Put the whole thing and upload it at once.
Exactly. We are devaluing what a director's cut is. Like, the director's cut is supposed to be the vision that, like, people at the studio who didn't believe in the marketability or whatever of your film, like, came in and interfered. So you're, like, correcting the record. It's not just like, here's my, like, super secret version with, like, my super favorite takes and alternate cuts. And like, here's with the color changed a little bit because I like this. I decided to try, just give it a refresh. Like, granted, that's what director's cuts are turning into for more than just Zack Snyder, but it shouldn't.
And that's what I hate. And it's weird because that's what he's arguing against. He had this whole bit. I know you're gonna hate this one for sure. I thought the Batman v Superman Ultimate Edition is a better version. I stand by that. I know some other people don't. I haven't talked to family since. But the idea that you're going to take a director's cut and have that be your rollout always in the future, it has him going out on record with Rebel Moon Part 1 and 2 and saying that if you don't like those movies, what you're fighting for is studios. That when he did the Justice League, that was a studio version of that movie, and that the Zack Snyder cut was a win for artists. And I don't like those talks because I get what he's saying and it's true. One is a studio version. Yours was, regardless of people liking you as an artist or not, it was artistic integrity. You have to give people artistic integrity whether you like them or not. You can't pick and choose that. When you're so well aware of it, though, I feel you're making a ploy out of it.
Right.
You already had campaigns for your Snyder Cut. Telling people if they don't like Rebel Moon, then they don't like artists, and they're voting for the studio, is also a pretty flagrant thing to say, in my opinion, because your stuff's trash, bro. We're not going to stand for trash in the name of artistry.
Yeah. Exactly. Like, he's not, inventing new forms of cinema. He's not Godard or Truffaut or something like that,
but
right?
He's got
He's
Nolan
making
saying
superhero movies.
Everyone's copied you. And superhero movies are the gold right now. It's not the French New Wave, it's the MCU New Wave.
Sure, but it's also like
New Wave.
The most commercial type of cinema that's out there right now. Like, it's not
Easily.
a lot of director's cuts, it has to be like campaign for. It has to be, there has to be this great desire from the artistic community. Warner Brothers could justify it because they knew they were going to get a lot of people to sign up for HBO Max. Like, there's a difference, I feel like.
And that's a great point. And to end it here, it's the streaming services that have allowed this. This is a new avenue for directors and studios to now profit off of things that we were never able to do before. Streaming. Streaming's to blame for Rebel Moon Part 2. Really quick, do you know the subtitle? Don't look at it.
Scargiver, right?
Damn, Snyder boy, you.
I watched the movie. He talk about it a lot.
At one point, I paused the movie and I went, what the heck? What am I Scargiver? I'm not watching the Scargiver.
Ask me again next week and I might not get it, though.
I hope not. Rebel Moon Part 2, the Scargiver.
Do you remember the part one? I'm realizing I don't remember the part one subtitle.
Part one has a subtitle?
I think it did.
Let me check it.
It's a Snyder movie. It's got to have some kind of pretentious subtitle to it.
Is this the first one? Let's see.
A Child of Fire, of course. Who could forget that?
Yes. Well, it'll be at number 1 without you streaming it over on Netflix.